Dr. Ivo Robotnik, everyone's favorite mustachioed, egg-shaped mad scientist. Sometimes he's an evil genius that works up these super elaborate and diabolical schemes, and other times he's kind of a helpless goofball. Today, we're going to look at Eggman's character in every mainline Sonic game and rank him from worthless to elite. In the OG Sonic the Hedgehog, Eggman's after the 6 Chaos Emeralds and sends an army of robots controlled by little animals to stop Sonic from getting in his way. He shows up at the end of each stage as a boss and brings some pretty painful contraptions with him. It's a classic Dr. Eggman role, and belongs in typical bad guy tier. Sonic 2 raises the stakes compared to the first game, now adding a 7th Chaos Emerald, having better boss fights, and worlds that feel more polluted and mechanized. But none are more impactful additions than Eggman constructing his very own world-destroying satellite, the Death Egg. This makes his plan a hell of a lot more menacing, and while it makes a return plenty of times in the series, its introduction gets bonus points. The only thing holding this one back is the final fight against Eggman. Now, the first phase of the boss versus this robot Sonic dude is decent. It's always cool to fight an evil version of your character, but battling the Death Egg Robo is kinda jank. His attack patterns are very predictable, and if you try to land hits where his arms are moving, even if they should be out of the way, they'll probably kill you. The key is patiently waiting for the few situations where he's completely vulnerable, because you don't get any rings, and one hit will take you out. It's a disappointing final fight, but Robotnik outrunning Sonic to the mech is even more bonus points, and lands him a spot in pretty menacing. In this game, Eggman's not after these 7 shiny collectibles, but rather these, the Time Stones, which he plans on creating a hellish dystopian future with, and it actually works. We see a ton of stages and environments get morphed by his actions, which feel very different from the natural and lively ones of the present and past. And beating the game doesn't always save the day either. Sonic may defeat Eggman as the final boss, but if he doesn't get all 7 Time Stones, he gets the bad ending, where Eggman still wins. I like those odds for him. This game's also the introduction of Metal Sonic, who was created by Eggman as a machine whose abilities could rival that of Sonic. And he's a thorn in our ass the entire way through, which helps make this a pretty easy elite for the Doctor. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Eggman tries to rebuild the Death Egg using the power of the Master Emerald, which is heavily guarded on Angel Island. So to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, he becomes allies with the Protector, Knuckles, and tells him that Sonic's trying to steal the Emerald and use its power for evil. Eggman shows up for a lot of boss fights, but Knuckles is doing most of the dirty work, so he doesn't have to do as much himself. Later on, he betrays Knuckles and restores the Death Egg, which sets him up pretty well for world domination, but stabbing Knuckles in the back is kinda what screwed him over, because Knuckles then helps Sonic and Tails reach Sky Sanctuary and eventually infiltrate the Death Egg. He was definitely prepared for it though, because this final boss is without a doubt the hardest of the classic Sonic games. And then the second phase incorporates Super Sonic, and Eggman just never stood a chance. Everything considered, I think he fits well in pretty menacing. He has a weapon of mass destruction, manipulates a very powerful character, and puts up a good fight. It also features him outrunning Sonic once again, so... In Sonic 3D Blast, the stakes are much lower. He's looking for Chaos Emeralds and has the Flickies help him find them. If Sonic gets all the Emeralds first, the animals are saved. But if not, Eggman escapes with the Emeralds. There's no fate of the world at stake, and it seems like typical Eggman hijinks. Sonic Adventure is the first of many games to showcase Eggman's fascination with ancient monsters. This time, it's Chaos. He goes around collecting the Chaos Emeralds again, and feeds them to Chaos so he gets stronger and hopefully helps him take over the world and fight off Sonic. That being the case, you don't fight him nearly as much as the classic games, but he still has his way for most of the story, tricking Knuckles again and collecting all 7 emeralds for his new buddy to evolve into perfect chaos, only for him to demolish the egg carrier and smack Eggman away like a fly. And to make matters worse, after Sonic defeats him and he reverts to Plan B, blowing up Station Square via missile, Tails is able to stop him without Sonic's help, which is great for him, but a pretty bad look for Eggman. He still has his moments though, pretty menacing. This one's an interesting case, because on one hand, he achieves exactly what he set out to, but on the other, he was ill-informed, and things almost went a whole lot worse. He learns about a secret weapon from his grandfather's journals, breaks into a high-security government base, and releases Shadow, the ultimate life form, who promises to help him rule the world if he brings in more Chaos Emeralds.
I'm going to assume you mean the Chaos Emeralds.
He does, and Eggman broadcasts a worldwide message threatening to destroy Earth if he's not accepted as the supreme ruler, and blows up half the moon to flex his power. When Sonic gets aboard the Ark and confronts him, Eggman captures him in a pod, tricks Tails into revealing that the emerald they brought was a decoy, and launches Sonic away in a capsule rigged with explosives. Now, if Sonic wasn't able to pull Chaos Control out of his ass with a fake emerald, Eggman would have killed him and won. But that's not how things worked out, and it gets worse for him, because after placing the last emerald on the Eclipse Cannon, it sets it on a collision course with Earth. So instead of being able to hold the destruction over everyone's head, the planet's getting destroyed. So to stop that, Eggman teams up with the rest of the characters to shut it down. Shadow, however, knew that was going to happen all along, and used Eggman's desire for world domination to his advantage. So for as bad as I want to put this in Elite, especially because this is one of his very few playable roles, I gotta lower it to pretty menacing. I'm grouping the Advanced Trilogy together again because I've done it for all the other characters, and his attempts are mostly the same. In the first two, he's trying to take over the world, and in the third, he splits the world into pieces by accident, but is still trying to take him over. The plans aren't all that special or unique, so he's a pretty typical bad guy. This one opens with Team Sonic receiving a letter from Eggman telling him that he's up to no good again. All four teams are in one way or another chasing down Eggman throughout the game, but Team Chaotic's story ends with them rescuing their mysterious client, who just so happens to be Dr. Eggman? Yeah, apparently the Eggman figure we've been seeing was actually Metal Sonic in disguise, who wanted to conquer the planet and prove he's the superior Sonic. But this ain't about him. Eggman is a helpless kidnappee, and even after being saved, refuses to pay the Chaotix their promised wage, making this a very easy worthless. Shadow's the main playable character in this one, and the way the plot unfolds is dependent on who he listens to. He can help Gun and the Heroes, Black Doom, or Dr. Eggman, and his importance relies solely on whether or not Shadow decides to help him. But in the game's definitive ending, Eggman doesn't do anything but tell Shadow that he's not one of the many Shadow androids, which barely does anything. I don't have that tier this time, so kinda dumb. In Sonic Rush, Eggman teams up with a version of himself from another dimension, and together, they try to collect the 14 Chaos and Soul Emeralds. Grabbing an Eggman from another dimension was a good idea, and one they'll surely not go back to again. But if there were two of them and they still couldn't outsmart Sonic, he's gotta be kinda stupid. What is that? In this game, he focuses his efforts on releasing another elemental monster, Iblis. This plot is super confusing and all over the place. At first he thinks he's Bowser and keeps kidnapping the princess, then he accidentally releases Mephiles, but his main goal of controlling the all-powerful Solaris bites him in the ass once again when it takes over the past, present, and future, and couldn't give less of a f*** about the Doctor. And in the most pivotal moment of the game, he's standing in the background helplessly with the rest of Sonic's pals, so kinda dumb fits him well. In Sonic Rush Adventure, the two Eggmen, team up and try to steal the Jeweled Scepter to control the waters and wind, take over Blaze's dimension, and build Eggman Land. They don't get far, and like I said for the first game, two of them, one mediocre plan. Just like Adventure 2, this is a really tough one to gauge. It opens with the most beautiful cinematic we've seen in a Sonic game to date, with Sonic and Eggman battling it out in space, and Eggman winning. He catches Super Sonic, drains all the power from the Chaos Emeralds and Sonic, and uses it to shatter the Earth into bits and release Dark Gaia, the third elemental giant f***ing monster. Now all we need is air. This leaves Sonic looking like that, and Eggman in prime position to take over the world. Where last time he wanted to build Eggman Land, this time he completes Eggman Land. And it's one of the most grueling and challenging levels in Sonic's history, making it well live up to the name. And the boss fight to follow it up versus the Egg Dragoon is equally incredible. Everything thus far is peak Eggman, but that only makes his downfall all the more glorious. When Dark Gaia reaches its full power, Eggman commands it to destroy Sonic once and for all. Yeah, just like in a lot of these games, Eggman accomplishes what he sets out to, but loses control over the situation faster than, well, Sonic. And this one's no exception. But constructing Eggman Land was such an accomplishment, and smashing the Earth into pieces has to earn him a decent spot. So I'm still gonna give him the lead. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, aka Eggman in Sonic 4 Episode 1. He brings back past enemies and bosses, tries to make him better, and sends him at Sonic for round 2. Not his best work. Typical bad guy. Eggman's plan in Sonic Colors is unique. He builds an amusement park in space to hide the fact that he's exploiting alien races. And it kinda works until it doesn't. Sonic thinks he's up to something and realizes that, yep, he's enslaving wisps and trying to power another cannon aimed at Earth. It sounds really serious, but the more lighthearted tone of this one makes me see him as a lot less threatening. And for that, I'm keeping it in typical bad guy. Generations has modern Eggman teaming up with classic Eggman, and their combined brains and force still can't stop that puny hedgehog. At least the giant monster he's working with doesn't betray him, but still, if two of them couldn't do it, he's going below typical. This one, again, has Eggman bringing back old ideas. He revives Metal Sonic and rebuilds the Death Egg, now called the Mark II version. Yeah, same shit, different day. Typical. Sonic Lost World has Eggman controlling a new group of hostile creatures, the Zeti. He controls them with this conch thing, and since Sonic's a silly Billy, he smashes it to bits and causes the Zeti to turn on all of them. They take over Eggman's environment-sucking machine and want to destroy the world, not just threaten with it. So Sonic, Tails, and Eggman team up to stop him, but Eggman betrays them at the end and uses the power for his latest mech, which is destroyed like every other Sonic boss. I like that they went a new direction with this, but the writing is god-awful, and I don't think Eggman had that situation under control at all. Also, this big robot being his ultimate weapon felt derivative as hell, and looks no different than any other robot he's tried to kill Sonic with. I'd go typical, but the amount of unnecessary bullshit he went through for it makes me lean more toward the kinda dumb side. Eggman's not really the main villain in this game. He tries to be, and he even brings Metal Sonic back to help, but Lyric is the real bad guy here. He can take over any of Eggman's robots with the click of a button, and can honestly kill him whenever he wants. He tries so hard to prove that he's better than him throughout the game, but makes more and more of an ass of himself each time, until the very end of the game, where Lyric has Sonic and his friends all tied up and ready to be killed, and Eggman surprise attacks him and kills him because he was jealous of his strength. This dude was gonna take down your arch enemies. Why didn't you just take him out after? He's an idiot.
No!
Despite this being a breath of fresh air for the Sonic series, Eggman's plan is pretty darn rudimentary. He finds some powerful jewel called the Phantom Ruby and uses it to send Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles back to older levels, where they chase down him and the hard-boiled heavies to make sure they aren't cooking up any evil schemes. But he still eventually takes over Little Planet, they beat him up, and it explodes. Typical bad guy shenanigans. I hate Sonic Forces. I will say that at the beginning of every segment. But this is one of Eggman's more successful attempts at world domination, mainly because he does take over the world. His new ally, Infinite, absolutely demolishes Sonic, and they lock him up in the Death Egg, which, yes, is back. The world then quickly falls into Eggman's clutches, and he does what he's always wanted with it. Creates a global dystopian regime with his robo-troops watching over. And throughout the entire game, this is felt through the environments you run through. It's actually one of the better things this game does. Eggman really thought this plan through. Even after Sonic's broken out, he's got troops on him 24/7. When they destroy the Phantom Ruby's power supply, he has a backup. Then he sends a f***ing sun at the Resistance to wipe him out. And even after that, has a pretty intimidating mech in place to stomp the Resistance. Even though he does lose in the end, the fact that he actually won for a while, and the sheer amount of backup plans he put in place, make this a pretty hard one to argue with. Elite. This one's another case of Eggman trying to harness some ancient power. It doesn't work, and he gets locked up in this digital cyberspace for a while, relying on his AI creation Sage to help him out. He locks up all of Sonic's friends and tries to pester him along the way, but in the end, needs Sonic's help to destroy another entity he didn't know the full power of, so he kinda dumb. And last but certainly not least, we have Sonic Superstars, where he plays a pretty traditional Eggman role. Instead of the usual Death Egg, we get the Egg Fortress. He kidnaps animals, but this time some of them are big. This is pretty standard. And there you have it. Real quick, if you take your Nintendo Switch on the go a lot and wish it was easier to lug around, you gotta ditch that clunky old dock. It's bulky, flimsy, and really doesn't have a good reason to be. And Accelerate Gaming's portable dock is the solution you've been waiting for. It cuts the unnecessary plastic of Nintendo's and gives you a sleek, durable, and very portable alternative. And it's only $20, so if you want to enhance your Switch setup and support this channel, go grab one now and use code JeremyK to get an additional 10% off your order. There's a very limited amount of uses on that, so redeem it while you can. And if you disagree with me on any of the rankings in this video, leave your takes down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching.